first off, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this and supporting me. This is the first time I'm ever doing something like this, and I look forward to doing a lot more and branching this into a bigger tree. But yeah, when it comes to how this came to be, is I've always had an intellectual curiosity to learn more about people. What makes them them, and I am planning to continue doing this. Beginning with the first episode I'm doing with is Salim Arif, who is Salim Saab for a lot of people and dad for me. So of course, he's had this wealth of experience, and I'm very fortunate to be his son, to learn so much under him, and to even use him as a canvas in this case. So please do take a look, share it with people, subscribe to my channel, and feel free to roast me, make fun of me. I'm expecting that as well. And for some people who are watching this who didn't know I can speak in this accent, well, now you know. And for some people who don't know how I speak in my English, like my American English accent, you're going to see that side of me too. So thank you so much, and I look forward to sharing more stuff with you. Good evening, Salim Saab. How are you?
I'm fine.
Thank you so much for finally doing this. I've been waiting to start the Happy, Healthy, Wealthy, and Wise podcast for a year now, but I'm glad you willingly said yes to this. Kind of, I forced you to, but anyways, welcome to the show, and let's dive right in. Quickly, just wanted to give us a little bit about yourself, a little bit of a background.
I was born in Fatehpur, which is in UP, between Allahabad and Kanpur. My father was in transfer there as an engineer, civil engineer, Muhammad Arif Hussain, and my mother was Sajda Arif, Sajda Khatun. They were cousins who got married. And this, from there, I remember my early childhood in Etawah for a while, then Lucknow. And Lucknow is where I literally grew up, because I was there from the age of 6,
Mm-hmm.
and right in the shade of a cinema hall,
Hmm.
Nisha Cinema. And near that cinema hall, I was growing, and there was this very good banner painter. Earlier, they used to hand paint these big hoardings in cinema advertisements. So Zakir Saab was one painter in Lucknow who was very good. We used to do these banners. So I started watching the way they were doing the banners. In the evening, I'll just go and watch them do it, and then try to come home and replicate that whole process of graph and enlargement and all that. So I got interested in drawing, and I discovered that I had a good hand in drawing and painting. And then I must have been 9 years or so when I got a prize in painting on the spot. That was my first award in Lucknow. And then from there, I was growing up. Then I got hooked onto cricket in a big way. Played at the club level, university tried, and then around the same time, theatre happened. So I got to see a play, and then I met a friend, and I designed posters for a play. That's how I got involved in a theatre group. And once I got involved in the theatre group, then it was, I knew this is something of great interest to me, because it had everything. And it was a live performing art, unlike painting, which was a very isolated. And I got some awards in painting also, inter-university. To Allahabad, we went for an All India Cultural Festival. I got awards for Lucknow University, painting award, on the spot painting also. Drawing, I got award in IIT Kanpur and all that. So I was in university known more for my art. And theatre work. And then theatre happened, and then Anupam Kher Sahab was there, Raj Bisaria Sahab was there, Bhatia Sahab was there. So Bhartendu Nat Academy, I did 1 year of training there. And as I finished, I got selected in National School of Drama, New Delhi, which was a big, big thing then, and still is. So that changed my whole life, because once I got into NSD, it became a game changer for everything around me, and I was completely on my own. Fortunately, I was the youngest. So there were no responsibilities of the family on me. My elder brother Azim Arif took great care of my parents and my sister and brother. The other one was a doctor, Ali Marif. So these two brothers were doing well for themselves. So there was no pressure on me to take care of the parents. And my father had just retired. After I went to NSD, he retired. So fortunately, everything was
In
well
place.
placed in place, and I could freely do whatever I wanted to do. So that was possibly the best years of my life in Delhi. Those 3 years, and then subsequent 3 other years till '86, I had a great time in Delhi. And then I shifted to Bombay. Shyam Benegal's Bharat Ek Khoj happened. Nitish Roy, Hemant Bhatia got me that assignment, and Shyam Benegal gave me that big responsibility at a very young age in my life. And then it all kind of changed everything. So Bharat Ek Khoj settled me in Mumbai, settled me in my life, settled me for good in Mumbai. Then Gulzar Saab, I was planning to go back, and Gulzar Saab said, "Why are you going back? Hang on. You stay back, work with me."
Hmm.
So his offer of working with him as an assistant was the new vocation I got. From a designer, I went to direction
Hmm.
and did direction. So that was a good change. And then Manmohan Singh called me for his film, so I could do a couple of films with him, and then some other things. So all that, those 10 years were kind
Yeah.
of up and down,
Yeah.
working in various, and directed my own television work.
Mm.
And I got bored with all that, so theatre became my full-time job from 2002.
Wow.
So then, of course, we did theatre and we traveled, all that. So it's eventful, but yes, there were times I wanted to go back to Delhi to join National School of Drama as a faculty. Then there were times I wanted to get out of Bombay and do my kind of work throughout the country. Those things didn't happen, but that's okay. I could work with a lot of students in Whistling Woods, in FTII, in National School of Drama, Bharatiya Academy, Lucknow, then MP Drama School, Madhya Pradesh, as guest faculty. So this guest faculty has taken me all over the country to various places, which is interesting.
And then what about your involvement with music and being a Tollywood
Music
artist?
happened because everyone, when I did Ghalib Nama, it's very interesting. This Ghalib letters and Ghalib ghazals together on stage when I did, it got noticed by every big ghazal singer of the country.
Hmm.
Right from Jagjit Singh, who I knew because we worked together in Kaikasha and Mirza Ghalib. But I was not of the same stature as Jagjit Bhai.
Of course.
Jagjit Bhai knew. So, but Jagjit Bhai knew that
Okay.
we have done a show like this. So he didn't need anybody, so he kept on singing. But Pankaj Udhas ji, Talat Aziz Saab, they all noticed. Then I did another album with Roop Kumar Rathore and Sonali Rathore called Bazme Mir on Mir Taqi Mir. So that became another thing to do. Then I did one with Talat Aziz Saab, Karwane Ghazal, which is another third album. Then we did stage shows. Then I got involved with Khazana, and Pankaj Bhai became a great family friend. One of the nicest human being I ever met. The great guy in Mumbai. Sadly, we lost him. I was very fond of, both of us were very fond of each other, and we could, every month, at least one or twice, we spoke on the phone, if not meeting personally. Talat Aziz has been a great friend. बहुत अच्छे Bakamal Ghazal. So all these music guys, and my interest in literature helped.
Okay.
So I could talk about poets, write about poets, do my poetry shows. So that makes me into another segment of my work, which is with music shows.
Yeah.
So that also, that's all very interesting.
Quite extensive in broader sense. It seems like you've worked with everybody out there. These are just some of the prominent names. There are other prominent names that are missing out, I'm sure. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. So yeah, we're going to dive into our 4 segments for happy, healthy, wealthy, and wise, beginning with happy. So, what I really want to ask you is, at this stage in life, how do you define happiness, or what does happiness mean to you at this stage?
I think happiness would be, to me, finding the right kind of mental engagement. Because if you are mentally engaged, then of course you are occupied, you are trying to solve some creative issue, some other problem. So I think it's important to be mentally engaged, because otherwise happy means what? Contentment means you are not wanting to do anything. Finally, if you arrive at a point where you don't feel like doing anything, that can't be happiness. So one has to understand it's a relative term. Happiness for some may be not doing anything. For some it may be finally I've arrived and I am where I should be. But then to remain there, they make a lot of effort. So even if you become very, very successful and you are at the top, you are number one in your craft, trade, whatever you want to say, to remain there, one has to work for it. So if that is happiness, well, fine. But it can't be that you have arrived at a station and you want to remain there.
I like that. That's nice. So, when you say, the mental engagement, so that requires you to be in environments that support that, right? The right people, as per se. But yeah, how do you cultivate this? What do you do? Is there something intentional that you practice to, keep your mind engaged?
You have to find things which interest you. You have to find people who interest you. You have to find issues that would interest you. And if that interest coincides with what you are trying to do with it, you'll attain a certain amount of happiness doing it. So it's not that there is a fixed formula that you find this path and you'll reach somewhere. But the idea is that anything which you find exciting, anything which you find engaging, anything which you find problematic, which you need to solve, I think that itself is something which gives you a certain occupation, gives you a certain vocation. Because half of the time you say, I can do this, I can do that, I can do that. But you choose to do one or two things. So how do you choose that? You can say do five things and at one point of time. Out of five, you do one. So how do you arrive at that choice? That choice is, of course, your interest, something you find worthwhile, something which gives you a certain amount of, as I said, satisfaction or certain amount of leeway to maneuver and to achieve things which you don't think you could have. That's one way to look at. The other is to keep working and reaching towards a goal, but that goal needs to be defined. So it's all very relative and very abstract in some sense. But in other sense, one has to find things of interest to make your life worthwhile. And the moment you are in, that moment to be worthwhile. So you can't wait for things to happen. So if they are not happening, you have to go out and find something which can create that engagement for you, which can create that interest for you, and you can move on from there.
I like that a lot. That's really descriptive in the sense that yes, you're right. You need to have some sort of a vision of what that looks like. For you personally, who do you spend a lot of time with? Who are like some examples in your life that help you with achieving happiness?
Lot of people. I've worked with some very great ones, great individuals, great artists. People like Habib Tanveer, Raj Bisaria Saab, K.N. Kakkar Saab. Then there were Kuvan Narayan, great poet. Then you have Gulzar Saab, and you have Mr. Shyam Benegal, and you have lots of others, Mani Ratnam, and all of them were very focused in what they were doing. But the great thing about most of them was that they managed their time well. So there was a certain discipline to their lives, which means they would have a very well articulated time division for themselves, and they would maintain that. So I think the common thing between, say, someone like Mr. Shyam Benegal and Gulzar Saab is they were all very health conscious people. They all loved good things in life, but then they would hit their office at 10:30 in the morning and remain till about 4:30 on their table. If nothing important at that moment, they would read something, they will find something which to keep them busy with. talk to people, meet friends, and then go home and do whatever they want to. So this habit of being in the office at the table has been common with most of them. The other thing is that they have all looked for challenges in their lives. In the sense, nobody asked them to do 12 things, but they did 12 things. So, why did you do it? Is a question you can ask them. But they want it because it gives them mental engagement, it occupies their time well, they enjoy doing. What is sense of joy? Sense of joy is trying to do something which when I say you enjoy, so why do you enjoy something more than the other things? Be it sport, be it art, be it whatever. That sense of joy is somewhere your mental stimulation and engagement. If you lose that connect mentally, then you are switched off. So then you suddenly switch off in a crowd. You become a loner in a crowd. Suddenly you feel you are isolated from the whole group. Something switches off. What is that? So that is where I feel that it has to be a very strong bond with what you are doing to make it worthwhile for yourself. And the only way to make it worthwhile for yourself would be that you find it mentally stimulating, engaging. It gives you a certain amount of, I should say, it challenges you. Then you try to find ways to overcome that and achieve. So this is like going first time on stage. So you have stage fright. So the first pleasure you have on stage is of getting rid of that stage fright, feeling at home. That feeling at home doesn't mean that you have become an actor. It means that now you are comfortable in that space. So first thing you have to understand is that whatever you are doing, you have to be comfortable doing it. Mentally, physically. And mentally, if you are, physically will follow. It is always like that. So once your mind is there under control, then it's things fall into it's half of the time things work in automation because you have learned with it, you have lived with it for a long time. So it's like driving a car. So your mind is multitasking.
Yeah.
So when you are multitasking, after a point you don't even think. If it's a daily habit, you take the turn yourself, and then by the time you reach home, you realize you're home.
Yep.
So it should be the whole idea. I think is to whatever you work in, it should be that engaging for you to
Okay.
make
Should
it
be that
worthwhile.
engaging mentally too.
For me, at least.
Okay. Okay. I love that. It's super deep, but I see where it stems from. Um, are there any like specific habits that you intentionally do daily
Not
to
much.
not much to achieve it? Wow. Because I feel a lot of people plan this out, right? We all have roles we play in our life. Some people find happiness spending time with family, or spending time planning, prepping, and doing all these things. But yeah, for some people, something else works.
It actually there is. I think with me there has been this issue. Unless you have a job to do or an assignment, you don't feel to get up and do it. So you are waiting for something to happen and then you react to it. But at times you have to find ways to find that engagement and go out and work for it and do that. So to me, I do plan what should I be doing the next day. But half of the time it's not something that I'm compelled to do. So that compulsion somewhere, lack of compulsion at times helps, at times it doesn't. So at times you have to create your own compulsions for doing what you are doing. That's why I feel that it's important to have a regular routine. But that routine may not be very conducive to a lot of creative output. So it's all very subjective.
That's really cool. So a lot of these questions that come to my mind come from the fact that success leaves clues, right? So you've achieved a certain level of success in your time spending in Bollywood or whatever you've been doing. Um, So yeah, I like all of this. Just to wrap up this segment, one of my last questions to you is, uh, what about gratitude? What are you grateful for? What are those things that really help
Grateful for
forward
opportunities.
opportunities?
You have to be grateful for opportunities which you got to work on. Grateful for opportunities to meet exciting people. Grateful for opportunities to meet people who were far better than what you are.
Mm-hmm.
Grateful for the time they could give you.
Mm-hmm.
Grateful for the fact that they treated you on an equal level
Mm-hmm.
most of the time. And gratitude for them thinking that you are worth something.
Mm-hmm.
If
Yeah.
somebody gives you a responsibility,
Mm-hmm.
it comes with a lot of effort because
Mm-hmm.
it's so you meet someone like Mr. Shyam Benegal
Mm-hmm.
gave me the most important job in my life in 5 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
and not even five.
Which
One look,
was?
Bharat Ekos,
Okay.
one look, and he says, "Okay, you do it for me. You've done it fine." So I guess part of the reason might have been that he was confident that he'll take work out of me
Hmm.
if I'm willing to work.
Hmm.
So all he was probably looking at that, well, I have
Mm-hmm.
done my training at the National School of Drama.
Mm-hmm.
I've been exposed to costuming and things like that. Research is something I can do. So he said, fine, be my team.
Hmm.
And then he kind of nurtured me and in his own way mentored me and but gave me immense amount of freedom and
Hmm.
trusted me like an equal.
Hmm.
So that opportunity
Hmm.
one has to be grateful for.
Of course. Of
Same
course.
with Ghalib, same with Gulzar Saab's responsibility
Mm-hmm.
given to me for Ghalib or Machis or Ututu.
Mm-hmm.
So they have all been jobs which have been assigned to you
Mm-hmm.
with a certain expectation that you will deliver.
Hmm.
So this whole notion of delivering
Mm-hmm.
on someone's promise
Mm-hmm.
is gratitude.
You're right. Wow. So, looking at your career, right? You worked with so many great names, right? From Sham Benegal to Gulzar Saab to Vishal Bharadwaj to Javed Siddiqui to so many names out there. Um, what are some stories, like some fun stories or things that must have happened on set that you can look back upon and be like, that was really cool, or just memories?
No, there have been interesting moments,
Hmm.
not very funny stories, because filmmaking is a very serious job.
I'm sure. Yes.
Because when you are working on a project which involves where time is money,
Hmm.
so very little time to fool around,
Mm-hmm.
and most of the time I was stressed for meeting the deadlines because
Hmm.
they were very
Right.
tight and very demanding.
Hmm.
The way Bharat Ek Khoj has been made
Mm-hmm.
is unbelievable. The way Mr. Benegal
Mm-hmm.
planned the whole thing and the way
Mm-hmm.
we all fell into place as a team and did it.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't a very respiteful time.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed marches the most because marches was fun. It was stressful, but it was fun because we were in outdoors in Manali with the entire team, enjoying interacting every day, and some of the finest people in the industry were there.
Mm-hmm.
So there was Mr. Manmohan Singh, the cameraman. There was Narinder Singh Saab, the sound recordist.
Mm-hmm.
Guldar Saab himself, the leader of the
Mm-hmm.
team. Then you had Om Puri,
Mm-hmm.
who I had a lovely relationship with,
Mm-hmm.
and Tabu, who I knew from an earlier film. So all of us enjoyed
Mm-hmm.
doing what we were doing. And then there was these four youngsters, Jimmy Shergill and Chandrachud Singh and Navni Sinha was my senior, and then there was this other boy. So we were all enjoying. We didn't know we were doing something which will be remembered so long
Hmm.
because things happen. Same with Bharat Ek Khoj.
Mm-hmm.
And it's ironical that the biggest projects of my life came at the earliest.
Yeah.
So I started with some of the biggest projects in life, and
Yes.
then I tried to branch off into other areas and did theater and did rest of it. But films are fine. I'm saying to me those moments sharing time with someone like Sanjay Leela Bansali when he was an assistant was great. So was spending time with Nitin Desai, who's no more the art director, Samir Chandra, the production designers. They have been some of the best in their trade.
Mm-hmm.
remembered for their sets, for their work. Nitish Roy,
Yeah.
who got me all this. So all these guys were exceptionally talented people, and I had more fun time with them,
Right.
discussing, enjoying, traveling. Like traveling with Gulzar Sahib is always a pleasure. So I've traveled the most probably with him. Then Habib Tanveer was another guy we used to enjoy together, and he would come up with his anecdotes and things. The thing is, I have always been a good listener, so I have listened to a lot of their stories. And those have been very interesting stories. So instead of creating stories with them, it's like. But yeah, now when you look at, say, a film, you remember what happened on each shot. So each shot, each segment of the film has a memory attached to it. So you remember, okay, this is when this had happened. Okay, we were there. This is when how it happened. This fellow was holding the light. This fellow was holding the torch. So something like that. So it's always very those kind of memories are there, which now people sit on YouTube and talk about how this song was made,
Yeah.
how that particular scene happened. So those kind of memories are there. But frankly, those are dressing room memories. So what you remember, it's like if you ask any sportsman today what they miss the most, they'll say we miss the dressing room
Yeah. Atmosphere.
atmosphere, the pavilion, the camaraderie,
Yes.
the fun we had while
Yes,
playing
yes.
matches. They may
All the
not
masti
remember
and
what was happening on the ground. Ground was something they were all prepared for, but what happened in the dressing room is what. Same. If you ask me, I'll say fine. I remember. I loved the process of making those films. Watching World Cup matches with the team of Marches in the evening after we have finished the shooting, sitting in the room enjoying that, or traveling together, or finding people and things like that, casting, going out to do something. So those are the memories, fun we shared. It's not each shot, as I said, each shot and each song has a memory, but creating them the way they came about, that has been very interesting.
Wow. But you've crossed paths with all the pioneers.
I'm
you
very
can say,
fortunate, very
of-
fortunate.
Yeah. Which only makes me think about the wealth of, or the bag of knowledge you carry with yourself from combined, accumulated from all these people. Um, but yeah, that's all I have for you in terms of the happiness segment, and some happy stories, fun stories. Okay, so moving on to our next segment, um, we're gonna cover the topic of health or being healthy. Right. So my first question to you is, what is like the number one tip, or something related to health and fitness that you really follow? One, and two, that it's replicable for another person who is listening
I
to this.
think, in simple terms, you have to take care of yourself, which means you have to monitor what all you eat, what all you do, and what is your limit as an individual. Limit in the sense what you can handle physically, you can't. So it's no big deal trying to be a superhuman being when you know you can't, or trying to hit the gym when you know you don't need those biceps and six packs for whatever reason. So the whole point is one has to understand the limitation, and of course keep an eye on what you are eating, because what you eat you are. So
Yes.
that takes, but it doesn't mean you can't indulge in food or whatever you like. You can, but you should know where to stop.
I like that. But yeah, you are what you eat is a big one. I believe a lot of people say that. Very few follow it.
Very
But,
few, very few, very
yeah,
few.
it requires a lot of discipline. But yeah, what does health mean to you in general?
I
Of
think health is
course.
the final thing,
Acha.
because finally what are you? You are your own body and mind, and health is what gives you that. So it's important to have a healthy mind and body both. And of course, body will carry you to whatever extent you can. And you fitness, yes, it's required in certain areas, definitely. Because if you are not physically fit, it will tell on your work. So it's important. Physical important is very important. Between health, wealth, and
Yeah.
wisdom, whatever you say, I think wisdom and health is important. Health is number one, if
Yeah.
you ask me, because that finally, as you grow in age, that's what you start keeping for or living for. Because then you want to, and illnesses can really be a big handicap. Handicap in the sense that if you don't take care, health is a big no-no after a point, in the sense that something good is going to happen and your health doesn't allow you to do that, or you fall sick, or you suddenly catch an ailment. Although these are all, again, we wish it shouldn't happen, but it happens to people.
Uncontrollables.
So it's an unforeseen after a point. I know some very lovely people going away very early because of some health issue. And but the ones I see who have gone long, they have always been very conscious of the fact that they have maintained a certain regimen about them.
What are some examples?
Gulzar Saab, for once,
Okay.
used to play tennis in the morning regularly till the last 10 years. About till the age of 75, 80, he was on the court.
Wow.
Morning he would go and sweat out. And then he would eat in moderation and control his other urges and maintain it to a point that, and he has a constant doctor as a reference. So any issues, he refers to them. So that, but that discipline, and the discipline of going to work every day. Mr. Bachchan is the other great example. Going to work every day. So that whole idea of waking up with a thought that I have to go and do this is incentive enough if you find the work you are going to do waiting for you to.
Yeah.
So there is a book which is waiting to be written. There is a poem that is lying incomplete. There is a song which he has to write. Or there is a book he has to read. That itself is an incentive, if you ask me. If you catch hold of a good book and you want to finish it, so you want to say, fine, I'll finish it tomorrow. So you have to find incentives in life to do that. And they need not be financial all the time. I think reading a good book is an incentive in itself, if one looks at it like that. But half of the time we don't. You see, we consider anything which doesn't produce money non-productive, which is very stupid.
Yes.
Because money is a byproduct.
Yeah.
And people who work for money, I know a lot of them, and they have succeeded in making money. But end of the day, they end up listening to music, sitting.
Yeah.
So after making all the money, they'll sit and spend time listening to music. So fine, if that is what you have to do eventually, why not do it now?
Yeah. I guess, especially for all the youngsters watching this, I feel a lot of us don't take our health as seriously as we should in our 20s. And
Yes.
I feel we exhaust all, the good things that can help us for, a longer,
I think
healthier life.
the generation today is in some kind of a hurry.
Yeah.
So that rush is probably not required, if you ask me, because there is a certain age for everything. So that time has been reduced, as I've seen in the last. My generation was waiting to buy a house at the age of 40, 45. My father bought a house at the age of 55. Earlier, it's still later. So, but now, by the time of 30, 35, you want to own a house, you want to own a car, you want to live on EMIs, and you want to work. So that whole stress is taking a toll on your health. You are eating food
Yeah.
which is not cooked at home. You are eating, living life which is half of the time in the pubs, sitting in the evening
Yeah.
discussing. So this whole notion of I don't know, because what that it's a, again, as I said, pleasure
Mm-hmm.
is a very relative
Mm-hmm.
term. So is happiness.
Mm-hmm.
But getting drunk
Mm-hmm.
cannot be a happiness,
Yeah.
because if you lose senses and that makes you happy, I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Or similarly in other things,
Mm-hmm.
if you lose your sense of balance, if you indulge to a point that you only do that much,
Mm-hmm.
you are depriving yourself of 20 other good things in life which you are not exposing yourself to
Yeah.
for some reason or the other.
Yeah.
Because one indulgence is keeping you away from the others.
Yeah.
That to me in this generation is an issue.
I see that too. I feel a lot of the time, especially people who drink to feel better and do those things, tend to do it to fill some sort of a void inside of them. There is
I
something
don't know
that
what
has
is
not been
this.
addressed, or कुछ ऐसा life में हुआ है that
Nahin, I
uh,
think it's just an escape.
yeah, that's what it's an escape. They're
It's an
filling a void.
escape, and it's sad because they are depriving themselves of at least 20 other good things of life
Yeah.
which they have not experienced,
Mm-hmm.
because they have got and ruined themselves in things like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Same in sports.
Mm-hmm.
Matlab, if you are mad about something, that
Mm-hmm.
I can understand. There's an age you get flawed.
Mm-hmm.
Sports is a great activity to be
Mm-hmm.
active in. But it can't be that you, apart from sports, you have nothing else in your life.
Yeah. You need a good balance.
You need a certain amount of exposure to other things in life,
Mm-hmm.
because again, sport is time bound.
Mm-hmm.
It's that it has a 15-year,
Mm-hmm.
20-year max
Mm-hmm.
time frame.
Mm-hmm.
So between the age of 16 and 36, or 18 and 38, and till
Mm-hmm.
40, 45, you will burn out,
Yeah.
depending on how you maintain your physical health. After 45, what will you do?
Mm.
You can't just sit and drink and bloat. And it was sad to see people like Maradona.
Yeah. Exactly. There are
Same,
endless examples,
endless
especially in
examples.
football.
Because
But, yeah.
after sports,
Mm-hmm.
they didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
So
A lot of them.
so that becomes a very sad thing. Same applies
Yeah.
to a lot of other people.
Yeah. Yeah. There are n number of examples for that. But yeah, I see it quite commonly. But another thing, I want to shed some light on is what you were mentioning about, the instant gratification in this generation. That, we want to get our house and, our millions and our cars and everything in order by the age of 30, 35. And that is not very realistic. For some of them, yes, they have achieved it, especially nowadays. Sky is the limit, right? You can do anything and get there. But then a lot of it also is on social media. Like, if you're having a bad day and you're working your, butt off and you're doing all the right things, and then at the end of the day, you come home and then you look at social media, and then there's somebody younger than you and who's accomplished all these things and is telling you that, oh, you can do it this way too. It's hard for them to,
It was
not
always like
feed
that.
into it.
It was always like that.
Oh, yeah.
Because there were people who were achieved much more than any of you
Yeah.
at every point in your life.
Yeah.
So be it there were 15-year, 14-year-old prodigies
Mm-hmm.
who were masters of
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that shouldn't stop somebody from doing what he or she wanted to do.
True.
Some flower late, some will have an early success. But I don't know what that success would lead to.
True. I think even the person himself would not know what that would lead
Exactly,
to, right?
because it's just that Satyajit Ray made, say, n number of films.
Mm-hmm.
He kept working till his last breath,
Mm-hmm.
drawing, painting. But nobody told him to work for children.
Hmm.
He wrote stories for children.
Yeah.
He drew for children,
Mm-hmm.
made comics, made sketches, and he would write also. He'll do that. So I'm saying this ability to do 10 things.
Mm-hmm.
Now that can give any other artist a complex
Yeah.
that he could do so much. I am not able to do. But you have to understand you are not made that way. And you don't have to stress yourself for that.
Yeah.
You do what you feel is good for you or you can do well, do it and see where you go. The moment you start comparing and thinking, you are reducing your own efficiency. Well, there have been examples like, say, Tiger Pataudi, Mansoor Ali Khan. He lost one eye at a very young age and played for India 6 months after that. And played for the simple fact that nobody knew the extent of his injury
Yeah.
apart from himself.
Yeah. Wow.
So, but imagine him going out and playing and competing with two-eyed
Yeah.
people,
Of course.
the best of his times, and playing for a number of years. It wasn't as if he played for 2 years. So between 62 and 74, 75, he retired in 75. Now, those 13 years, he was competent enough to be on the field with some of the greatest cricketers of all time. But then he never made an excuse of the fact that, look, I have only one eye and I can only score this much and I can't do this much and that. Even then he went out and hit
Yeah.
batsmen. So I'm saying there is no end to your own sense of achievement if you work for it. And whatever, there is a place for everyone under the sun. So let that be a smaller place than compared to some other big guy. Fine. You lived your life well and get out.
Right.
Now, if you want to be remembered and you want to do things, then remembered for what? Van Gogh is remembered now, but he had a miserable life. The greatest painter, one of the
Yeah.
greatest painters of all time.
Yeah.
So, if you want to be a Van Gogh, I would not like to be a Van Gogh. Lead a miserable life and then be remembered after my life. So, I'm not living for past glory. So that's the other way to look at it.
Yeah.
But if I say, look, I can't be a Van Gogh, so I shouldn't be living, that's stupidity. Because some people have that in there.
Yeah.
People like, now when you look at, say, Indian films, there have been examples of Mohammad Rafi and Kishore Kumar and Madan Mohan Sahab and Jai Kishan. They all died under very young age, 57, 40, 49, 51. But look at the body of work they have left.
Yeah.
Now, if they were thinking and they had issues with themselves and with their lives, but one was fond of food, one was fond of... But I'm saying, look at the quality of work they left. So maybe it's not the biggest in terms of... Lataji may have left much more songs than Kishore Kumar and Rafi Saab. But the fact is that Rafi Saab left also a huge body of work within the time he lived. And those match with some of the best in the world. That should be satisfaction enough that you came in this world, you did something worthwhile and you went out. What now if you think that others didn't think what you were doing worthwhile, there's so many unsung heroes.
Yeah.
You see, you watch a Broadway musical, and I give these examples to all my actors, that the dancers, the 20 dancers who come and do enter on time, correct beat, correct exit, they're professionals. Nobody takes their name. But they're coming, doing their job
Yeah.
to the best of their ability and leaving and playing a part in the overall experience of the audience without getting a single name or a single applause. What will you call them? Or one of the symphony orchestra violinist. There are 50 of them. You don't, each one of them you don't single out and say he's best and he's better and anything. But they all come together and create that experience for the audience. And they enjoy doing it. And they're enjoying the moment they are doing it. I think that's enough for one to feel obliged and grateful that, well, I got this. अब उसकी नाम होगा तो अब if you are, say, I find it, all these statues, they are used by birds.
Yeah.
You feel you have honored somebody with a statue. Nobody goes down and look at the name unless someone says this is so and so.
Yeah. Unless you recognize it right away. But yeah, so coming back to, the health. and fitness. What is the number one advice you've gotten from a doctor, a peer, or somebody that
Again,
stuck with you?
understand your body and limitation.
Okay.
You have to understand the limitation
Mm-hmm.
of your body, because
How
not
do you
every.
do that? So, what are some things
It's
you
very
can?
simple to know.
Okay.
If your body is complaining, listen to it.
Hmm. Listen to the clues it's giving you.
So you have to understand that, well, I'm made this way
Mm-hmm.
and this is my limitation. People have overcome that.
Yeah.
So there is always, I would say, merit in the fact that you challenge your body.
Yeah.
But challenge to a point.
Mm-hmm.
And challenge for, I don't know, for some reason you don't have to be, I'm saying, if you are 5'6"
Mm-hmm.
you'll be 5'6".
Mm-hmm.
Now all these superstars of Hindi cinema today, the three Khans,
Mm-hmm.
are not 6 foot.
Yeah.
They are not the traditional Vinod
Yeah.
Khannas and Amitabh Bachchans and Feroz Khans of
Yes.
70s. Yeah?
Yep.
But they look at the success they have achieved, look at the rate on which they have performed, and they have kept them. Look at their fitness levels. They're all touching 60, and
Yeah.
so
Which is commendable.
it's commendable. I'm saying they have understood their bodies. Na?
Mm-hmm.
They have never tried to be a Vinod Khanna or knowing that fine, I'm Shah Rukh Khan knows I'm 5. This is my height, and I'll manage within that. But that doesn't. Or Govinda, who was even shorter.
Mm-hmm.
They were just not what a mainstream hero was all about.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
But they challenged some of the biggest 6 footers of their time.
Mm-hmm. They did. They really did.
So,
That
so,
when
so,
you look back.
so you have to understand, and they have kept their fitness levels okay.
Yeah.
They have worked on their bodies. They have maintained their fitness.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm saying they are in a profession now when actors are healthier.
Mm-hmm.
They are working on their bodies because they have understood
Mm-hmm.
that the 70s, the era of 70s has gone, where you can afford to have a little paunch and be a leading person,
Mm-hmm.
leading hero. Today you have to be fitter and smarter and clever. So that's fine. I'm saying, but they have all understood their bodies.
So we'll wrap up the segment for health and fitness for now. Let's dive into our next segment, which is basically going to cover wealth or being wealthy, right? Um, Now, how do you define wealth for yourself beyond, financial success? Beyond just financial success.
Look, wealth will give you the strength and the power to do what you want to do
Hmm.
in a way where you are not kind of born into luxury.
Hmm.
If you are born into luxury and you don't have to think, you just have to, your wish is command kind of a situation,
Mm-hmm.
then wealth doesn't mean anything. You can't relate to it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a top industrialist may not have seen a 10 paisa coin or the new 8 anna coin which has come in the market. But that doesn't mean he doesn't know how to deal with money.
Yeah.
These are two different things.
Yeah.
So, for somebody who is into living a regular life with all facilities, each thing has a cost. So, there is a cost to everything. So, money is necessary, is important, and you should value money.
Mm-hmm.
But you should value money to a point that it has to give you a means to live well
Mm-hmm.
and survive well.
Yeah.
But half of the time, what we think well
Mm-hmm.
are aspirations which we create looking at others.
Hmm.
So one has to understand one's own needs first to assess how much money is good enough for you to survive.
Hmm.
I've seen my father live in a certain way. We have lived in a joint family, so I know how he was with money.
Mm-hmm.
Careful, but he loved good clothes, he loved good shoes, he loved good things in life. And he spent whatever he needed to. But when we were growing up, there were sacrifices which both of them made.
Hmm.
then our needs became more important than their needs.
Hmm.
But that's how a family head would look at life.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that it was he was depriving himself of something.
Hmm.
But he may have deprived himself for a new suit
Hmm.
or a new shoe
Yeah.
or say a movie which
Hmm.
he couldn't go and see. But those are very small
Minus one.
deprivations.
Yeah.
The problem is we think that it's like the aspiration which builds into you, and we are all part of a what I call we are living in a society where your needs are generated in you.
Hmm.
They are not your basic needs. We
Yeah.
are part of a consumer culture.
Yeah.
So the consumer culture creates aspirations in you.
Mm-hmm.
Half of the time you do not need those things. But it's important, again, as I say, you have to know yourself. It's also knowing yourself and your needs
Mm-hmm.
vis-a-vis wealth,
Yeah.
to understand how much wealth is functional for you.
Mm-hmm.
Because wealth has to be functional.
Yes.
Otherwise, it's a notion. You may have an X amount in the bank or in savings, but you are not living and using it. That again is not fair.
Hmm.
Like I know people who deprive themselves of a lot of things and say we are saving for a bad time. But the way they are living is also living like in a bad time.
Hmm.
So even when you are earning, you are considering not living good enough
Mm-hmm.
and waiting for bad time to come to you so that you can use your saving and survive.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one way of looking at it. I would rather look at it from the point of view that whatever you needed, have you managed to do that?
Hmm.
Rest of it, as I say, is just a notion. It's a notional idea.
Hmm.
So to me, a branded shoe for an X amount of money
Mm-hmm.
remains a shoe to be worn in my feet.
Yeah.
Okay. So I should know how much I can spend or value my shoe for.
Hmm.
Same with a watch, same with a shirt, same
Yeah.
with a. So there is a functional side to it,
Mm-hmm.
there is a decorative side to it,
Mm-hmm.
and there is an aspirational side to it.
Hmm.
So to me, functional is the basic.
Okay.
Then comes the decorative.
Hmm.
Then comes the aspirational. At times we are confusing these three in a very different way.
Yeah.
It starts from the aspirational,
Yes.
then goes to
I was going to
decorative, then goes to functional. So even if you're uncomfortable,
Mm-hmm.
you'll wear a high heel shoe because it's part of the so-called fashion.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it suits your physique, it suits your height, it suits your body figure, all that becomes irrelevant. You feel very happy with the idea that I'm wearing a shoe which is worn by so and so
Yeah.
and of this cost. And it makes you feel, well, I'm as important as the other person.
Yeah.
Now, whether you match that person in terms of ability, in terms of quality, you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe it gives you a mindset which makes you feel good, which makes you feel wanted, which makes you feel like, okay, I've arrived.
Hmm.
Now, that's a complex you are trying to hide behind your branded clothing, branded footwear, branded watches.
Mm-hmm.
Because 5 minutes down the line, if you meet anybody, and anybody of consequence, he'll be able to assess you that behind these clothes, what kind of a person or a mind we are meeting. So whenever I go and meet somebody, his clothes and those things really don't matter after the first 3 minutes.
Hmm. Yeah.
The first 3 minutes, yes, you understand that this man likes to dress well. He presents himself well. He is careful about the kind of things he's wearing. But he is not flashy. He's comfortable with his brands. All that you make out in the first 3-4 minutes. But the reason you have gone to meet that person,
Mm-hmm.
that defines to you the meeting, not his clothes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So 10 minutes out down the line, everything becomes insignificant.
Hmm.
It's the mind behind that body which you are engaging with.
Yeah.
So in a discussion, it may be the highest person in the country.
Yeah.
I've met some of the biggest names in the industry. I've met some of the biggest, and they've all come across as very interesting people. because of the way they have kept themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you met the Prime Minister of India, late Rajiv Gandhi. I happened to meet once.
Mm-hmm.
He was very comfortable in his khadi kurta,
Hmm.
and he had a nice shoe,
Yeah.
cushioned shoe,
Mm-hmm.
and no big brand watch. And he had a gamcha like one of the rural guys
Yeah.
to wipe his sweat,
Yeah.
and he was comfortable.
Yeah.
And he was Prime Minister of India.
Mm-hmm.
So you have met that, and you know people who like to dress up. Mr. Modi, he presents himself well.
Mm-hmm.
He's well dressed. He's well articulated. So whenever he's going to any other country, you know that he is representing a country. He is the Prime Minister of India, and he represents it well because of his clothing, because of his appearance. But after those 5 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
what the Prime Minister or President of France thinks about him,
Mm-hmm.
about the policy, about the decision, that becomes important.
Yeah.
That appearance is okay. That's for the picture, photo
Yeah.
op.
Yeah.
And there were times I've seen, again, Rajiv Gandhi, I'll give you the example. He used to drive his own car. He loved driving the car. And he came from,
Even
he was
Ratan
a
Tata
pilot.
for that matter.
So we surprised everyone.
Yeah.
You have a Prime Minister who's driving his new
Car.
Jeep coming into for a meeting. I saw that. So it was very interesting to see head of a state
Yeah.
like that. But he was like that. So I'm saying the personality then defines.
Hmm.
So you know, okay, fine. If Modi ji started wearing half a sleeve kurta, then suddenly it became fashion.
Yeah.
It became fashion in a certain
became
class
a trend
of people,
and,
in trend. So trend becomes from, but not everyone who wears that kurta is what the Prime Minister is.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
So I'm saying, we are talking about wealth. So wealth is useful if you know how to use it,
Yeah.
and if you know how to use it well.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just a figure.
Yeah. What do you think about the financial literacy side of this? Like, how important do you think? Like, I know, like, I'm not saying, when I mean financial literacy, I don't think like it's everybody's cup of tea to know exactly how money functions and, the value of money, or, like understanding stocks and all these, crazy things that they are not in, everybody's scope of priorities or things to learn about. But in general, having some sort of literacy on how to use financial or how to use their finances super important. So what do you think the role of financial literacy plays in all of this?
No, it's as important as literacy.
Okay.
And basic literacy should give you a certain understanding of financial literacy.
Hmm.
You should know how to deal. For instance, I find it very important for us to know how to do banking,
Yeah.
how to keep your money, because how to use your
Hmm.
resources.
Hmm.
Now, this is all part of financial literacy. There are advisors, there are schemes which come your way. You invest here, you invest there. But half of them, I know for sure, are done by people who want employment out of those schemes. They don't benefit the individual as much as the agents who do that.
Yeah.
So they are selling it, and there's a commission involved in all that. There is a certain maintenance involved. So the bank keeps their employees, the money is rolling, all that. In financial literacy, again, individual choice. Share bazaar, not everybody's mind.
Yeah.
And the sad part about business investment is that it has become some kind of a gamble.
Hmm.
Share bazaar is functioning more like a gambling
Yeah.
space, which ideally should not be the case.
Yeah.
Because any decent business should have a certain parameter of functioning.
Yeah.
That this is the percentage of profit, maximum and minimum, which an ideal or a good business should make. And people should understand that. This is speculative gambling in the name of stocks and playing with stocks and all that is a different, some people have the knack of it, but it's not for someone like me. I don't understand it completely.
Yeah.
So to me, I should have money to use.
Yeah.
That's my basic.
Do you ever look at people as currency, in the sense that having somebody that's of value, or somebody of bigger stature than you, or somebody who is in your corner, and not exactly currency, but can help you or put you in situations where you can make money, or you can double up and
A lot
pursue.
of these film stars
Hmm.
do that for directors.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
The reason a director would chase a star for 3 years
Mm-hmm.
to make a film,
Mm-hmm.
half of the time is to have the financial comfort
Mm-hmm.
to make a film.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you don't need a star to make a film.
Yep.
But that financial comfort is what drives a man to behave
Yeah. Exactly.
like a subservient
Mm-hmm.
individual who's showing up, and the star is saying, "Okay, I'm thinking about you. I'll let you know. I'll let you know," and making.
Have you ever looked at somebody in your life like that, or
No.
No. Okay. Makes
The
sense.
reason I didn't make a film is this,
Okay.
because I found that whole system very strange.
Hmm.
Chasing stars to make a film,
Mm-hmm.
having the power, and then trying to make a film which you want.
Mm-hmm.
I realized very soon that the star wants to make one film, the producer wants to make another film. There is a third
Director
person
wants
who.
to make another.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
So all three are at times not on the
Different
same
pages.
page. And you end up making a film which nobody wants to own.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a hit, everyone says, I said so.
Mm-hmm.
I've yet to find any actor stand up and say,
Mm-hmm.
I'm responsible for this flop.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They are the first ones to chicken out. These
Yeah.
stars, they never own failure.
Yeah. Of course.
And they are constantly reminding directors, do it this way, this is how it will work.
Yeah.
If it runs, they all run around
They
and
take the credit.
take credit, but they don't. So I understand that system very well,
Yeah.
and it never excited me to be part of that whole game, because I realized that we are putting someone's money,
Hmm. Hmm.
a producer who is investing money
Mm-hmm.
on a certain amount of falsehood,
Yeah.
on a false promise.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing that and going to con that man for 1 year with the hope that, okay, your money will come back and it will recover, it will be a super hit film.
Mm-hmm.
That to me was a very strange feeling, because not that people don't do it, people do it. And
Yeah.
there are people who are willing to
Yeah.
gamble with their money. But what I did not like was this attitude of stars who want to be successful at any cost
Mm-hmm.
without taking a single responsibility for any failure which they generate.
Yeah. Yeah. At least in my top of my head, I can't think of any actor who's ever accepted or taken ownership.
Okay,
of
well, I spoiled
losses.
that film.
Yes.
I was the one who got carried away.
But we hear stories all the time, of course.
No, there are actors who say, yes, I fought with the director, but the director wanted me to do it this way.
Yeah.
I did not agree, but I did it and the film became hit. So the credit is of the director.
Yeah.
But he will never say that I tried all the time to make it into a bad film, but the director stopped me from making it into a bad film. So it's a very strange.
No, that is so true. I like that. Now, just switching it up a little bit. So another thing I wanted to ask you related to wealth was some business principles, right? So, of course, you've never owned businesses or anything as such, but you've had production houses for theater. You've been in teams. You've guided them, mentored so many people. A lot of them are big names now, and you've worked with almost every big name out there. So when you were running these, what were some principles that added to the success?
My mother used to say something very interesting. She used to say that excess money creates bad habits. So you should detest from making excess money, otherwise you'll end up in vices. Now that was the point of view we were brought up with. So you may agree, you may not agree, but I'm saying becoming rich
Yeah.
to a point where you have the best car and best house and best all that didn't really ever excite me.
Okay.
It is very strange, but it never
Yeah.
excited me. And in fact, whenever I use, and I still look at people who do well, I admire their ability to have worked so hard and made that money. I have some of the best people, people who have survived. They made really good money,
Yeah.
and they have been good, decent paymasters, and they have made good monies. But end of the day, they have lived a comfortable life.
Hmm.
But their legacies, you may remember them with or may not.
Yeah.
So I don't know what my. So I'm saying, to me, it was a pure lack of ambition as far as money is concerned,
Mm-hmm.
which I never had for some
Yeah.
reason. I don't know. But I never had the ambition to be very, very rich.
Okay.
So that was, I think, a limitation for certain point of view people, because what do you work for?
Hmm.
But to me, as I said, mental engagement is prime. So if I'm
Yeah.
mentally engaged, I'm happy.
Pursuing your creative endeavors and
Whatever.
yeah,
If for
whatever.
the,
Yeah.
that
makes sense.
moment, if I'm mentally occupied,
Yeah.
I'm pretty happy.
Nice. Now, so that is a lot to just unravel, and but amazing points made there. One of the last few things I want to ask you is, along the line, what are some of the biggest financial lessons that you've learned, and also some financial lessons when it comes to the risk-taking aspect?
Look, I've lost a lot of money
Hmm.
taking risks. But then I realized I was taking risks expecting others also to come up and show things, what they had promised and they had not. They did not fulfill.
Hmm.
So after that, saving money is important, yes.
Mhm.
So we save money. You should have reserves. You should have monies for contingencies, unforeseen issues. And but I don't think that should be an obsession.
Mhm.
Obsession in the sense that, oh, you take an insurance because you may go to hospital tomorrow. You do this because you might have to do that. That's okay. That's okay. I think one should do that. I'm not saying one should not. But you can't live life like
Yeah.
that.
Hmm.
Anybody who comes to me from the insurance sector and says, in an unfortunate incident, this much money will come to your family. So I tell them, yaar, what are you going to give me? Tell me that.
Hmm.
You are wanting me to invest in the money, which doesn't come to me.
Hmm.
So why should I give you money? So, to which they don't have any answer. I find that whole notion very stupid, that you are taking money from me,
Yeah.
which will eventually, after my death, go to my sons, my family. So I said, am I saving? I can save it for them directly. Yaar. Why should I give you? So it's a very, I find those kind of things very,
Yeah.
and they have no answer. They just get down. Okay, they have
Yeah.
never heard something like this. But I genuinely feel that a whole system has been created with all kinds of middlemen trying to take money out of you in the name of insurance.
Yeah.
Directly insure, if you put it in your bank and insure it, but people get greedy that you will not get so much interest in this, so you should invest in so and so. Then you
Yeah.
should, but forgetting that if I invest, say in a mutual fund,
Mhm.
so the mutual fund handling guy will take money out of my money, which he's trying to generate for me, and show me in losses. His money will be constant.
Huh.
His fee for handling will remain constant.
Yeah.
My ability
also
to earn
fluctuates.
profit is always
Fluctuating.
fluctuating. So I find that whole idea of finance very stupid.
Yeah.
I'm saying that's how it works.
Yeah.
But to me, so I find it very funny. I find it. I said, don't talk to me about this. I just throw them out. They get very hassled about this because they say, but it's your. I said, it's my money. I'm wasting it. Just let it be.
Huh. Yeah. I see why. Now, one more thing. This is a common notion, right? Around theatre, especially. Okay? Theatre mein paisa nahi hai. There's no money in theatre. Now, of course, looking at the life you've built,
Mm.
everything you provided for your family, and all of that, um, is pretty good, And even though people say there is no money in theater, which to a certain degree is true, what would you suggest somebody, who's up and coming, who wants to pursue theater but does not see much money in it? What are, how can they not put all their apples in the same basket or
You'll
everything in
have
a
to make
basket?
your money
Or
somewhere else.
okay, and how do you, what is
In
something
the
you recommend
sense,
to do that?
if you are an actor, you'll have to
Hmm.
work in stage, television, film, wherever.
Yeah.
Throughout the world, everyone works. It's only in India
Yeah.
people have an issue
Hmm.
that, okay, he has left theatre and went into films.
Yeah.
Here, people forget in America, in England, everyone who comes in cinema
Hmm.
comes from stage.
Yeah. A huge
Even ad
difference.
films.
Yeah.
For an actor, a job is a job.
Yeah.
And I am not an actor, I understood that. But I realized that there can't be a 12-month job for me as a director also on stage.
Yeah.
So I'll have to teach
Hmm.
workshops, do that. But that cannot be a very good survival for me.
Hmm.
12 months of workshop all over the country.
Hmm.
You may get excited about it, you may not. But at this stage, I choose my workshops. I
Hmm.
choose the student I want to work with.
Hmm.
So I use my time in various institutions,
Hmm.
which I enjoy a lot. So anybody who's aspiring to do theatre should understand that theatre will give him a certain amount of high, certain amount of purpose,
Hmm.
certain amount of competence.
Hmm.
But it will not give him the ability to survive full time, especially if he's doing Hindi theatre.
Yeah. Certain amount of fulfillment
Fulfill.
to a degree.
So, and today, there's no reason why you should just do theatre.
Yeah.
I even find that notion very stupid.
Yeah.
Okay, no, I'll do only theatre. Why? You should do whatever you want to do.
Hmm.
An actor is an actor.
Hmm.
Some people say, no, I want to die on stage. Good enough, you go and die on stage. But the point is, who has asked you to die on stage?
Huh.
It's your wish.
Yeah.
So, so go and fulfill it. But don't think that people will give you extra brownie points for the fact that you
That you
do
are so
theatre, or
dedicated
you're
and you love
obliging
it so much.
society
Yes.
by doing theatre.
But yeah, perfect. I love that. So we'll finish off that segment and we'll dive into our final piece, which is the wisdom.
Hmm.
Right. Now, when it comes to wisdom, again, starting with a similar question like all the other segments, what does that mean to you? Right? What is your mental diet? I feel the most important conversation you have every single day is with yourself, right? Your mental dialogue. So, what is your mental diet? What does wisdom mean to you?
Wisdom would mean that having an opinion
Mm-hmm.
which is considered, which is taking into account various aspects,
Hmm.
various point of views.
Hmm.
And one thing I learned very early on, I don't know where it came to me from, must be from my mentors and teachers, that I could see the other person's point of view very clearly.
Hmm.
So even if I disagreed with someone, and if I was into a discussion with someone,
Hmm.
so whatever that other person was saying, I was in a position to understand why is he saying that,
Hmm.
and make some merit out of that point of view.
So basically, you were not judging the person for what they're
Yes.
saying. You were more so curious why are they saying it.
So my curiosity to understand,
Hmm.
and that comes from the fact that you are trying to understand a mind
Yeah. Yeah.
you are interacting with.
Mhm.
So my curiosity from a very early age has been from the age of 16, 17, when you met people like Raj Bisaria Saab and others. So the whole idea was that if they are saying so, half of the time you may not understand what they are saying. But the reason for that, the perspective, the understanding. So this ability to see the other person's point of view comes at a certain amount of understanding of life also.
Hmm.
So you are better equipped to handle people,
Hmm.
which say in my profession you have to. because you are handling several actors, you are handling. So how do you manage that team
Hmm.
without imposing yourself on them?
Hmm.
How you make the other person come to your page, same page? How do you make an opinion which the other person can understand and follow?
Mhm.
So all those have been part of that grooming.
Hmm.
So wisdom to me has been that.
Hmm.
It's not knowing what Socrates said and what so
What
and
these
so
the
said,
million quotes that
quotes
you
and
come
what.
across and
Fine, you read writers, you read philosophers, you
Mhm.
read, but you understand what they are saying and why they are saying.
Mhm.
So, but to me, people have been very interesting.
Hmm.
I think one has to learn from people
Yeah.
more than books. Because if you know and meet people, and this is
Mhm.
what I find very interesting.
Mhm.
So, whenever I'm traveling
Mhm.
out of Mumbai, out of my own circle, one of the most interesting aspect of the travel is to know and engage in new people,
Hmm.
new students, new
Mhm.
artists, new.
Mhm.
So, I'm very excited to meet a person I don't know.
Okay.
So that excitement comes from this very fact that I want to understand how that man has achieved and done this,
Okay.
which is something which I have not done.
Yeah.
Even
But
if I may not aspire to do that,
yeah.
but to engage and understand
Yeah. Just
how.
have that intellectual curiosity. What makes this
Yes.
person the way they are? I think I think very similarly whenever I
Because
talk to.
wisdom you can get in, what you get in books
Mhm.
is someone's own assessment of
Mhm.
what he thinks has been wisdom, what he has acquired.
Mhm.
But there is wisdom in everything.
Yeah.
Anybody can give you that pearl of wisdom.
Yep.
You can just, anybody can say a sentence and it can be an eye opener.
Yeah.
So one has to just be open about it.
Yep. Yeah. It's so true, right? Sometimes kids,
Yeah.
especially, will say something that will strike you that a million people have been telling it to you,
Um,
but you're not really listening to them, but it strikes you because of the way
and
somebody
wisdom,
says something.
again, you have to keep questioning. Wisdom comes from questioning.
Yeah.
So unless you question
Yeah. Why?
why and
Because
how,
yeah.
so that questioning will give you a certain amount of wisdom
Hmm.
about understanding things.
Hmm. How's your perspective on life changed as you've become more experienced?
But life has to change.
Okay.
See, the way we grew up,
Mm-hmm.
we shouldn't expect that to happen again
Mm-hmm.
for various reasons. Our exposure was very different.
Mm-hmm.
Our time frame of life was very different.
Mm-hmm.
We had ample time to use.
Mm-hmm.
Today's child with all these gadgets
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have time. So what is happening is that the mind is getting scattered.
Yeah.
Now with that scattered mind, whatever these people are achieving
Hmm.
is quite interesting.
Yeah.
So there is growth. It's not that all that is new is bad and all that
Mm-hmm.
was good was past. No,
Mm-hmm.
that's the wrong way of looking at it. Things will change.
Hmm.
You have to understand and know how to use it. Like internet, for instance.
Hmm.
Now internet came and changed the entire world.
Yeah.
Mobiles came and they changed the entire world.
Yeah.
The fact about technology is the more you use it, the
Mm-hmm.
cheaper it becomes.
Yeah. Artificial intelligence now, Chat
So,
GPT
so
and all these.
all this will now create a different human being.
Yeah.
Biologically, maybe the same, but mentally and faculty wise, very different. Because half of the time, what you thought were your achievements
Mm-hmm.
will be done by machines.
Yeah. Very
We,
true.
we, we were made to learn maths by rote.
Mm-hmm.
So, all the tables,
Mm-hmm.
you got marks if you read the
Memorized all
table
of it.
proper,
Yes.
and so it was more of a memory game.
Mm-hmm.
Now you have computers to do that for you.
Yeah.
Why should you get into algebra and sit and spend 3 years
Yeah.
trying to learn what is the point? So. It all comes to you
Mm-hmm.
with the help of a gadget. So I'm saying that kind of education has to change. That kind of thinking has to change. The utility of that education has to change. Because half of the subjects we are taught we never used in life. I still want to understand what did algebra do to me. Except give me A plus B or trigonometry or whatever
Yeah.
I learned. But you were made to do that.
Yeah.
That was considered education.
Yeah.
While we didn't know how to go to a bank and sign a check and get your money out. That should have been part of your education.
Yeah.
Or how to book a railway ticket, confirmed railway ticket.
Yeah.
So I'm saying I've grown up at a time when this was done manually. Now you can do it online. Now this whole notion of online has also changed how you use time. So everything will change. And it will redefine your leisure. It will redefine your... Now, due to pandemic, all these OTT platforms. Now, watching a movie is no more an outgoing affair. So you'll watch a film at home and go out and eat. Earlier, it was you were eating at home and going out and watching a film. So it has altered.
Yeah.
But it has altered for various reasons.
Yeah.
Now, if you make a good use of this, it's good for you.
Yeah. Exactly.
You should know how to use it to your advantage.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I like that. What is the best piece of advice you've ever got?
I've got everyone I've met
Has
has
taught you something or the other.
something or the other.
Sort of like some big takeaways from, it could be great minds, it could be.
No, takeaways, for instance, Kuan Naranji
Hmm.
was a great thinker and a poet, one of the finest Hindi poets, one of the finest modern Indian minds to me. I was fortunate to have access to him. As an 18-year-old, I'll go to his house and he would entertain me, sit with me, and he was a very eminent guy. And he'll talk to me about various things, about painting, about literature, about... So if I ask him a question, he'll give me an answer. And I once said I find Satyajit Ray very simplistic. So he said, took a pause and said, have you seen Aparajito? I said, no. Have you seen Charulata? No. Then he said, first you see that. That was his own polite way of saying that before you make an opinion, see more.
Yeah.
Now, that was one interesting thing I remember at the age. And Raj Visaria Saab would say something. Kakkad Saab was another one mentor who would say something. Bajaj Saab in his own way was something. Mohan Maharishi taught me something very interesting. I just passed out of NSD and I was on fellowship. So I wanted some stationery. So I wanted a signature to go to the store and take, as we were students allowed to do that. So he saw that, he said, what is this? I said, I just want some stationery. So he said, now you are a professional, you better buy your things. So that advice came to me. So I understood, fine, you have to value, you have to buy your own things. Otherwise, you are living off.
Yeah.
So these small little things have come to me from various advices. But nothing which has kind of, I can say that this has been my Guru Mantra. There has been no Guru Mantra because
No philosophy or such, and just.
I've been fortunate to have dealt with such diverse minds. Habib Tanveer was a doyen in his own way. He said something which was told to him by his teacher, which he conveyed to me, which is what I remember every time I do a play. Because he says, don't do anything on stage which should confuse the audience. So I make it a point not to do anything on stage which confuses the audience for the story. They should get the story right.
Yeah.
That's the bottom
flow
line.
should not be.
So that fluency of narrative I've learned from Habib Sahib.
Wow.
In his own way, in my own way, I use it. It's very different than his theatre. It was not. I'm not imitating his work, but this is what I've learned. Raj Bisaria Saab's sense of lighting, use of space.
Mm-hmm.
So those things I've imbibed and learned from various people.
Mm-hmm.
And Ratan Thiam was another one.
Yeah.
So is Bansi Kaul Saab. So all these people have had some influence. Prasanna,
Mm-hmm.
his use of space and his use the way he used it. So all these, that's why, interestingly, it's very difficult for me to find my style.
Hmm.
You know, and I'm not dying for that. So I do 5 style of plays,
Mm-hmm.
which is one radically different from the other. So if you see my plays, they don't look to be done by the same person.
Yeah.
They look very different. So now that ability has come to me from all these teachers, because I never wanted to develop my own style of narrative, or that I find very hackneyed as a concept. You see a person's work and say, oh, this is his. Now that to me is after a point limiting.
Okay.
That if your work can be identified like that
Just so easily.
so easily, then
Some
what is
people
that?
like it, but
No, no,
if you don't.
then where have you grown?
Yeah. True.
That means your first play and the last play look the same.
Yeah.
So you haven't grown as. So this is how I look at it. But other people look for their signature effort. Oh, this looks like a Ratan Thiam play. This looks like. But I've consciously
Stepped away from it.
stepped away from it and deliberately tried to use other means of communication. So that has been another same in drawing, same in painting, same. I do diverse style of painting, never thinking what anybody has to say, because I do it for myself. Same with plays and same whatever I do. So it is not that one is bound by any kind of conventional wisdom or conventional thought, but one has to just think differently. Everything is a new. Every play for me is a new work.
Yeah.
So it has to be thought with a new eye, new mind.
One thing I must say is, looking at your history and the diversity of inclusion of different things, like say for example you paint, and then you've done these amazing plays that have gone all over the world. Then you also have incorporated music and live performance, not only music but even dance, into a lot of these different scripts. Some are plays, some are musical shows, and somewhat starting a trend where other people are trying to do the same thing. And you've done so many different ways to incorporate art. So the fluency of all of this, how does that come together for you? Like, where did this begin? Were you always the kinds to be exploring, and did the intellectual curiosity go towards...
Look, it was this intellectual curiosity, you can say, and the whole notion of not getting fixed.
Okay.
This whole idea of not consciously trying to be different, but that every text to me needed a different treatment. So, because it was different from the other. So, if I'm doing a Gulzar Saab story and poetry together, all these 3 plays are different, where poetry is used differently. One is sung without music, one with music. Now, use of music, for instance. This whole notion of presenting a writer on stage, a poet on stage, Ghalib, with Ghalib letters and ghazals, became a trendsetter. Now, everyone is doing the same thing with poets. Some reading, some... That started with Ghalib Nama 22 years ago, 23 years ago. But I could see that possibility.
Okay.
And I saw that possibility, and I would say I was courageous enough to try it, or taking the risk without thinking what the audience will bother. Because my basic strength, as I tell people, comes from my audience. I have tremendous faith in the audience. So I don't think about audience as if they are dumb, they will not understand, they need to be told. I'm very confident about whosoever is coming to watch your work is capable enough to understand what you're trying to do.
Okay.
So I'm very confident. So that confidence gives me this whole freedom to experiment. And half of the time they take it. I was thinking most of the time. They've taken it and they have applauded it. Some things have taken a little while for them to
Yeah.
understand. But then once they understood, now they say, okay, fine, they have been trendsetter. For instance, Kharashe. When Kharashe first happened, nobody thought, including Gulzar Saab, that poetry and stories will go together.
Hmm.
I tried that. And I was confident it will create the right impact. Once he saw the show with Shyam Benegal Saab, M.F. Hussain Saab, they were all in the audience. The first show, tremendous audience. Some of the most creative mind of the country watching the first show in NCPA. And the response we had. I knew that what I had thought has worked. Ghalib Nama, when we did, Dubai, Muscat, all that. Two young people, me and Jaswinder, trying to explore Ghalib. Everyone was floored because nobody thought Ghalib could be presented like this. And same with the other things. Even Taj Mahal ka tender, I did, the writer was surprised that I thought of it in this way. So he said, this is the best production of my play, which was a big compliment. So this confidence comes to me from my confidence in the audience. Because I am not thinking of them as people who will not understand. I think of them as people who will understand everything that I am saying to them. And they do.
Like that. Nice. Wow. So yeah, one of my last questions to wrap this one up is, uh, what are, like, when you have to take important decisions, right, in life, who are some of the people that you would go to for advice, or who are some mentors, mentees that have really made an impact on you, or have made a mark where you consider them to be in that circle of influence when it comes to making decisions?
Like right now, there's someone like Gulzar Saab, there is Javed Siddiqui Saab, then Lubna would be one. But end of the day, the final decision comes from me. So it's not that they are of any influence. I take their opinion, which is important. I consider their opinion. But at times, if I have felt that what I am thinking is the right thing to do, the right way to go about it, then I do it.
Okay.
And but with this rider, that fine, I'm thinking I should do like this, but let's see. So I'm not saying I'm 200%. Things go wrong, things go right. But I don't want to lose this ability to decide for myself on my own. So that, I think, is the key to your work. If I'm convinced that this is the content I want to do, I'll do it. If I don't like it, I throw it out. I've done productions which I've closed after one show, two show, whatever, because I didn't like it myself. I did it for some reason which I knew why I was doing, but that reason after a point doesn't work for me, so I've gracefully accepted that I don't want to continue with it. There are various things, but a final decision, I think, at this age, you should be in a position to know what you're doing, why you're doing, and that should give you the right answer.
Do you think, what is your balance, right? I feel everybody either goes by intuition or logic or both. What is your balance?
This is
Do
my
you follow
balance
more
comes.
intuition, more logic?
No, intuition comes from experience.
Yeah, exactly.
Intuition is not that it's not something eureka. It's not enlightenment. So intuition is, again, enlightenment is also coming out of a long period of experience.
Yeah.
Then you get that opinion that fine,
Yeah.
this is what it is. So I think that clarity is again relative. But yes, decision making has to come from your own experience and confidence. Intuition, yes, but intuition will only come into place when you are in doubt. Intuition, your intuition said that this is the right to do, which may be a gamble you are taking intuitively. But yes, you over a period of time develop intuition about people,
Mhm.
about situations,
Yeah.
which 99% is correct.
Hmm. Yeah, you don't feel that this is an unknown territory for some reason. You
It's
have
like
some
you meet
experience.
somebody
Yeah.
for 5, 10, 15 minutes and you can
Yeah.
make an opinion,
Mm-hmm.
which more or less is 90% correct.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Correct.
So now intuitively you feel that this man I can relate to,
Mm-hmm.
this man I can't relate to.
Mm-hmm.
That intuition is what? That intuition is first 3, 4 notes which are in sync.
Mm-hmm.
The moment they get in sync, you pull along.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you make friends.
Mm-hmm.
So in Mumbai, most of my relationships have been like that.
Hmm.
Intuitively, one could feel that yes, one can reach out to them, they can reach out to you.
Mm-hmm.
So you've had lovely interactive relationships with some of the greatest artists of the country.
Mm-hmm.
So it is based on this only.
Yeah. Makes sense.
That if I'm saying, if they ask you for an opinion
Mm-hmm.
and you give them an opinion, they know that this opinion is a considered opinion.
Mm-hmm.
It has some merit in thought. And if they don't see that, they'll ask, but why are you saying that?
Hmm.
So you give them your reason of saying what you are saying.
Yeah.
And most of the time they respect that. Okay, this is the correct way. Because you're not playing sycophant. You're not playing cheerleader.
Hmm.
You are saying, wait, this is how it should be. I think this is what you are and this is what you should be doing.
Mm-hmm.
So those kind of things happen. And that's how you build strong relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Relationships come from this reliability of opinion.
Yeah. True. Nice. One of my last questions. So in fact, yeah, to wrap up, this segment, it's a two-parter. One is, what is one advice you would give your younger self when it comes to wisdom, and on the other hand, what is a piece of advice you would pass on to the next generation who is watching this?
Look, both, I'll have to say only thing. See as much as you can, read as much as you can, think as much as you can.
Mm-hmm.
If you do these three,
Mm-hmm.
you will have a certain opinion about things around you,
Hmm.
people around you, and that should keep you floating.
Hmm.
And then you build certain ability and reservoir in you which gives you the confidence to deal with the world.
Hmm.
So that preparation ideally should be from your education,
Mm-hmm.
and that education doesn't mean classroom.
Okay.
You have to learn.
Hmm. How can you learn?
You have to
things like that?
educate yourself.
Okay.
Educate in the sense, if say you are reading about Shakespeare,
Mm-hmm.
you are reading Merchant of Venice.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I would expect the younger person to read at least 5 other Shakespeare plays.
Okay.
Know a little more about Shakespeare.
Okay.
Read whatever material he can get on Shakespeare. Discuss with enlightened teachers about Shakespeare. Then make his own opinion about Shakespeare.
Hmm. Yeah.
So
Kind of the advice you got from.
this is how we have all grown, in the sense
Yeah.
that fine, I was fortunate to be a theatre person
Mm-hmm.
reading Shakespeare.
Hmm.
So to me, performance was the key.
Mm-hmm.
How will it go into performance?
Mm-hmm.
Although people read it like piece of literature,
Mm-hmm.
they never talk about performance, but they read
Mm-hmm.
and read it as great poetry and literature. But to me, this performing side was the real test.
Mm-hmm.
So how will it go on stage?
Hmm.
Was the question I was constantly asking myself
Hmm.
while reading as a student of English Shakespeare. Some answers were given then, some answers I got later in life.
Mm-hmm.
But if you go to Globe Theatre, understand the architecture, you know how the performance will be. So to me, the functional side of art is very important,
Hmm.
especially performing art.
Mm-hmm.
So anything, and this is again, any young student who comes to me,
Hmm.
I ask him these very simple things. Okay, fine. What other things have you read?
Hmm. What other research have you done? What other homework
Not
have you
research.
done?
If you are reading only one Chekhov
Yeah.
play and talking about Chekhov, that's wrong.
Yeah.
If you're, so one has to have as much inputs.
Yeah.
Like Ghalib, for instance.
Mhm.
Now, Mirza Ghalib, you can't understand the person just through his poetry. You will have to read his letters
Mhm.
and certain amount of biography, what he went through, to understand the man.
Mhm.
The moment you go just rely on his Urdu poetry for his understanding,
Mhm.
he comes across as a very different person than what he was in actual life, what his letters say. So, creatively, you may be the biggest, most serious, most profound
Mhm.
poet on this earth.
Mhm.
But we forget that he was also a human being.
Mhm.
So he had the same failures or same issues which a normal human being can have.
Mhm.
It's just that he wrote extraordinary poetry.
Mhm.
Doesn't mean he was an extraordinary human being.
Mhm.
He's the poet which so these kind of things you come to know, and that's how you demystify a lot of things in life. You meet all these great writers, actors, directors. You look at their film, they are different persons, but you meet them in real life, they are very different.
Mhm.
So whatever notion you make of their film
Hmm.
through their film is not what they are.
You know, that in my head when I'm listening to all of this, it also raises another important point to discuss is the importance of qualified advice.
Look,
What do you think about
qualified
that?
advice you have to seek.
Yeah,
It will not come to you.
of course.
So how do you
But
seek
like
that?
how important is it that you know what do you
No, for
how important
instance,
is it?
artificial intelligence, 10 years down the line,
Mhm.
should be in a position to give you qualified advice.
Yeah,
With all the data it has of all the failures and
yeah. At
successes of
some point,
people
yes,
in
it should be.
situation, if you says,
Yeah.
hey Siri or hey this, find me a solution to the problem I'm facing. And it has all your dilemmas, history fed into that system.
Hmm.
Artificial intelligence should be in a position to give you 5 options,
Yeah.
pointers.
Very true. Because one thing is right. Remember, I've heard this thing from a friend of mine. He's super experienced, has made his millions and everything. One thing he said was, the big game changer for him was just to chase qualified advice in the sense that you will go to a millionaire if you want to make $1 million. You won't go to somebody who's had everything else but is not a millionaire, right? Because they'll be
True.
in a position
Oh,
to
but
give
that's
you,
true.
yeah,
But half of the time, you should also understand that how that million was made.
yeah, exactly. That's what the
So
point being.
the
Yeah.
point is, if you go to a Ratan Tata for a business advice, it will be different
Yes. Exactly.
than somebody who deals in duplicates.
Yeah. True.
You go to a music pirate, he'll give you a different advice of
Yeah.
making million. And if you go to Ratan Tata, he'll give you a different advice. So,
True. Awesome. Thank you so much for doing this.